Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, Jack Schonely and I sit down with Andrew Nicoletti, a sergeant and pilot from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Get ready for an engaging conversation as we explore Andrew's unique journey into aviation, from his early experiences to his operational responsibilities in a busy county. Andrew discusses the intricacies of the Huntsman mission, particularly the challenges and nuances involved in dignitary details. The episode also highlights the critical importance of precautionary landings and the role of succession planning in law enforcement. Andrew shares how his experiences with the Civil Air Patrol and his education at the Citadel have shaped his career and outlook. As the conversation unfolds, themes of leadership, continuous training, and the challenges faced in aviation for law enforcement emerge. Andrew reflects on his military deployments and current aviation operations in Palm Beach County, emphasizing the necessity of mentorship, relationship building, and the meticulous planning involved in high-stakes scenarios. Whether you're interested in aviation, law enforcement, or leadership development, this episode's packed with valuable insights and lessons that are sure to resonate. Thank you to our sponsors, Wysong Enterprises, Technisonic, and Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Hey, welcome to the Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host, John Gray, and I'm really excited for today's conversation. It's funny. Sometimes you come across people and their name's been a topic of conversation quite a few times. Our guest today, you know, I heard him on the Pilot's Lunch podcast with the homies from Brotalion a while back, and we joked with them like we were stealing guests back and forth, and we joked. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to steal Andrew, and man, that was what two years ago, I think, that you were on the podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's been a minute. And then Ray Freeman, you know, a good friend of mine, and he's a good friend of yours. He was a mentor, and he was on the podcast, and he's spoken highly about you. So again, your name's come up quite a few times, and it took a little bit to get you on the podcast, but we're happy to have you. To help with the conversation, to keep this conversation going, is the Commander, Jack Schonely. How you doing, sir?
Good, John. Good to be here. Good to be here with Andrew.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
It's been a minute since we recorded, so it's good to be back in the seat and chatting.
Is.
So it's been a busy month, but a lot of peripheral stuff going up, but no recording. So this is great.
We lined a lot of guests up. We've got all sorts of things coming up and in the future that we're working on, and it took a lot of our time. But yeah, it's been a while since we sat here with the headsets on. So this is exciting.
Yeah, you guys have been live for a while, right?
Yeah, there was all sorts of stuff going on, and then we were down in Northern California doing some stuff with Canine Torque and the UE vets, and we've been busy, but not with the headsets on in this format. So it's good to be back.
Absolutely. So to properly introduce our guest, Andrew Nicoletti comes to us from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. You're a sergeant and a pilot there. Am I missing any part of that?
No, that's it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. And again, there's a lot to talk about. Really excited to pick your brain, because you've got a lot of unique experience on things that a lot of people don't really have the opportunity to do, one of which we'll get to in a second. Before we talk about that, though, can you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and what your current assignment is? Yeah,
so I'm Andrew Nicoletti. I was born and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida. I grew up here. My wife, actually, we went to high school together. We didn't date until much later, but it was just a typical Florida boy, you know, growing up outside, fishing, diving, basically anything on the water or in the woods we would do. So pretty normal childhood. Parents were great. I've got older brother, and my dad was in the reserves, in the Army Reserves. I grew up kind of just around the reserves. He's an attorney, so he was a JAG, and one day they had a Huey come in and land back when they used to be able to do that. that was it, man. I was hooked. That thing hit the deck. I started climbing around it like it was a jungle gym. Probably flipped some switches. I don't know. But it was awesome.
You jettison a few things.
Yeah, just, popping off tanks and wiggling sticks. So yeah, I remember it vividly, which is kind of wild. And then my dad took me in a flight in a 500, one of those you pay for. It's like 5 minutes. And I can remember every part of that. And I just always, that was it, man. I was locked in. I wanted to be a pilot from pretty much then on. I knew I wanted to do something in aviation, kind of bounced around a little bit. And then when I was in high school, 9/11 happened. My dad had just retired like 9 months before that. So he didn't get deployed or go anywhere. And I just felt like that was the route that I needed to take. So I went to, military college, graduated, and just started pursuing aviation professionally in the military. And then, how things shaped out, I ended up becoming a cop. And
yeah, that's awesome.
now I just get to have a great gig.
It's pretty cool looking backwards when you can pinpoint that flight of the Huey that came in as kind of the starting point. We just had a chance to go up and see the Huey Vets helicopter and their Huey, and Canine Torque is associated with that as well. What a cool experience that was.
Yeah.
You talk about the place in history for that aircraft. It is such an iconic aircraft,
Oh yeah.
And Jack had a chance to write a short article and do a little bit of research. Man, there was some interesting facts that came out of that.
Incredible. I learned, I'm so glad that I did that, because I learned so much about that aircraft. That's an amazing aircraft. I knew that before I did the research, but I learned like 1,000 new things about it that just make it even more iconic. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could have any pilot on here. You could talk about Hueys for 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
No problem.
For sure.
Yeah, they're awesome. Just total workhorse.
Yeah, just the sound alone, you hear it and it's like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And
That's why they dub Blackhawks with Hueys in every movie.
Yeah, not just Blackhawks, Jet Rangers,
everything.
Robinsons, everything's a
That
Huey.
A-Star sounds really funny to me.
It drove me crazy. Like the Bosch, there's Harry Bosch out on his deck up in the Hollywood Hills, and an A-Star goes by and it's a Huey sound. It drove me crazy.
well, I kind of previewed something a minute ago, talking about the unique experiences you have operating where you do. Can you talk a little bit about where you operate and what some of the responsibilities are that go with that?
Palm Beach County is a pretty large county. It's the 9th largest county east of the Mississippi River. It's the 2nd largest in Florida, only shorted by, I think it's like 20 square miles. It's not far off. And we are very busy. So our population's like 1.7. It's very, very busy airspace, busy population growth, busy call volume. And we're the only aircraft that services not just the county, but every municipality. So there's no municipality that has aircraft as well. So if anyone in the 39 municipalities calls for an aircraft, we're coming. So,
Wow.
And then we do law enforcement mission set as well as rescue. So we don't have a medical component on board, so we're not doing actual medicine, but we are extracting and then getting the next highest level of care possible. So
Then on top of that, on top of your call volume, all the municipalities that you're servicing, you've got a very important person living within your geographic boundaries. Can you talk about that and what some of the responsibilities you guys carry as part of that?
yeah, so I mean, even it started 8 years ago. Really, we were cruising through this, and when we started identifying how we were going to start assisting, so the Huntsman mission set, which I'm sure most people have had some experience with or at least heard of it, is basically when you're supporting the Secret Service. So we do Huntsman, we do dignitary details, and that is really starting to come into the fold as what typically was before maybe a mission set that you didn't really get into, or you might do very rarely. To us, is a 6 days a week to 4 days a week type of mission set, where crew coordination, making sure that we have the right aircraft available. We're hopscotching aircraft a lot of the times. We've got 4 429s, and just the other day we had 3 of them flying all at once. We need to be able to respond, anticipate the possibilities that could occur when you're dealing with dignitaries, and then be able to allocate our resources appropriately and move them around when necessary. So it can be extremely dynamic in a very small amount of airspace. But yeah, that's something that we've really come up as a unit, and that includes a lot of training, a lot of just kind of working through the motions, understanding, where we're going to go if we need to move, do something, pick up a sniper, infill a team. How are we going to do that? And that's all part of our kind of this umbrella mission plan that we're coming up with, and it's constantly evolving. We're constantly kicking things to the side and then picking new things up. So it's fun though. It keeps you going. There's a lot of good training that comes out of it. The pilots all get on board. Everyone's willing to work.
Do you find yourself talking about those possibilities and training and that particular mission every single day, even though you're not doing it every day? Do you find yourselves discussing it every day?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and I think that a lot of units are starting to transition to more of this kind of working as a crew. So like we do a 6 a.m. brief with everybody. So everybody's there that day. Maintenance, everybody's briefed. And we go over everything that could possibly happen, everything that needs to happen. If they're doing a 50 hour, then we're going to know about it and we'll know which aircraft we need to swap to. But then we go into, hey, we've got these movements today. This is what we're going to do. And then something I kind of pulled from the Air Force is like I always try and throw in, hey, this is happening, and you get it some sort of emergency, whether that's you take a round to a drive shaft or you get an engine ship light, like whatever, doesn't matter. But I always try and keep the crews kind of their minds in the game, moving around like the pieces on the chessboard, understanding how things are going to flow if things start going bad. And then if things go well, hey, we still have these other dynamic missions that we might have to pick up where we've got rescues going on offshore, inland, other just calls for service. The big one happens and, you get 3 bank robberies at one time or something like that. You got to be prepared for that stuff because there's nobody else. Nobody's coming. It's just us. So
the person we're referring to is former President Donald Trump. He has a place down there, and you guys, it's unique because you consider Washington D.C. The Huntsman mission is part of their everyday routine. There's not many places outside of where you guys are where that's almost an everyday occurrence. Like Jack said, it's not every day, but you guys, that's a top consideration for you guys. So you guys are very familiar with that mission set and what's required. A lot of agencies, especially this time of year, when you're in an election cycle, the city might get somewhat short notification that they're going to have a presidential candidate come in and be there for whatever they're doing. So what advice do you have for agencies that might find themselves in a position where they're providing that aerial platform coverage for one of these candidates?
Yeah, I think that, most agencies, they're probably only going to provide. So really the Huntsman mission is really just having a Secret Service agent on board and being able to kind of explain like the layout of the area, right? It's probably going to be foreign to them other than the map recons that they've done. So, you're kind of outlining like, hey, these are some places that I would check. You have a little bit of input there, but come up with kind of a game plan. Like, hey, the moment you get notice, hey, we're going to use this aircraft, it needs to have, a viable headset in the back. If you can have a screen in the back, that's even better. You're probably not going to have an aerial platform operation for that. It's probably just going to be just surveillance or searching. So you don't have to really worry about that aspect. I mean, I've done it in 58s and I've done it in 429s. You can do it in whatever you got, and they'll take whatever. The asset itself, the fact that Secret Service doesn't have aircraft is perplexing. But
it is.
They lean heavily on law enforcement and other agencies anyway. So, and it is our backyard. So we're intimately familiar with where we go, and the routes that we search are the same routes that most of us rode on our bikes as kids. Like we know every crack in the pavement, we know every route that comes out of the trees, we know everything. So that's helpful for sure. But I mean, having a plan, having a comms plan, having a pace plan, having a primary alternate plan. You're probably not going to get down to contingency and emergency, but you definitely want to have some sort of backup plan going on. and then work your crews the way that you need to. That can go into either fixed crews or just putting the right people at the right positions. That's also key.
And Jack, you guys had a lot of experience, I'm assuming, at LAPD dealing with these types of missions. What's your input on that?
Believe it or not, we didn't.
Really?
We used to. It switched to CHP. California Highway Patrol Aviation handled everything in the state for Huntsman missions. Now that was different before I got there. I've heard stories, that where they did it all the time. But my whole time at air support, we did things on the peripheral, and we did things with some lower level dignitaries. But if it was the POTUS, it was CHP. So I have zero experience in that.
Wow.
But I've talked to enough people, U.S. Park Police being one of them over the years, and now Andrew, that I'm just fascinated by it because, like Andrew said, you have to be ready for everything. You have to think of so many contingencies, not just the aircraft, but what if it hits the fan? Who are we going to talk to? Where are we going to go? And some of that's based on the Secret Service guy with the headset in the back, but not all of it. Some of it's going to be pilot stuff. Some of it's going to be TFO stuff. It's a fascinating mission that if you're thrown into it, good luck. You better hope everything goes right, because it gets complicated. And just from the little bit we've been talking, I'm already impressed with the things I've heard Andrew say about how much they talk about it, what they talk about, the fact that maintenance is there on the briefing. That's just smart planning, because that's a huge responsibility. And I'm sure that Andrew, jump in here. I'm sure it becomes where you just don't think, oh, okay, we're doing it again. Whereas somebody who hasn't done it before, they're going to be, oh my gosh, you guys probably aren't like that, I'm sure, because you've done so much preparation and because you've done it so much. Is that accurate? Where it's kind of become part of your mission?
Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
The days happen sometimes where you roll in there and you're like, oh, man, it's Sunday. It's good. We'll be fine. Fighting that complacency monster is always going to be huge.
Yes.
Anyone who tells you it doesn't sneak up on them is a liar.
That's right.
So yeah, but that's also the joy of having everyone in the brief, because the moment somebody comes in there and they're like, man, I'm really tired. Kids were up all last night. I'm just trying to make it through today. There's going to be somebody else who will be like, hey man, game face on. We got things to do today. We have direct examples of how things can escalate very quickly. And, you just pop that back in your mind and you go, okay, yep, I'm in, I'm ready to go. And you get that kind of 15 minutes to recage. You're doing the long drive into work typically, and you pull up to the hangar, you mosey in. But when you sit down in the brief, people start talking, and that really kind of gets everyone on the same page, but also kind of brings everybody up to the same level. And that's kind of the key, right? Like everyone's got, your weak link may not be a weak link every day. You come in just tired, whatever. But, making sure that weak link's as strong as they can be, so that the team's as strong as they can be. That's the key. We want to produce the best product, help out every one of our customers, and that's the key.
That's a great mindset for any mission, but certainly for this, because of the unknown. 99.9999% of the time, it's an escort.
Yeah,
it takes that one day.
That's it.
Yeah.
One crazy day.
Yeah.
I remember in a conversation with the U.S. Park Police, and Andrew brought it up already, is the comms plan, how important that comms plan is. And it goes, that's an extreme example of how important a comms plan is. But I think of LA County, and you brought up too, Andrew, with 25 municipalities surrounding your agency. If, as a TFO, you've got to be intimately familiar with those frequencies in those different agencies, even if they're not part of your own agency, because, luck will have it, you're going to end up over one of these little cities, counties, geographic boundaries, and you're going to have to figure out how to communicate with those folks on the ground. And it's going to be right now, So having those comms plans, I think, are crucial. Not only do they help you for that specific mission and what you're doing on the Huntsman stuff, but it really plays into the everyday calls for service as well. So, Jack, I know in LA County, and I feel like you can end up in a different city every square mile. How did you guys deal with that?
The main thing was having a good radio package, and then, having the hardware and the software now, the hardware and software, having that ability to communicate with anyone. That's number one by far. But then the human factor comes in. Does the TFO, the pilot, the crew, do they know how to use it effectively? And training and having that list in your pocket, in your flight suit, being able to pull it out and say, which frequency is that? Oh, here it is. Boom. That was important on pursuits, particularly,
Yep.
where you're going from agency to agency. And like you said, in LA, there's islands within LA, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, city of San Fernando, Burbank's right there. So you better be really familiar with that radio package, how to use it and what to say, what not to say, kind of things. And so the chief TFO made sure that all the TFOs were up to date on the information and how to use it. Because radio packages, they change. I mean,
All the time.
over the whole time, I mean, I bet they changed 3 times, 4 times. So, being familiar with it is really, really important. Because when it hits the fan, we all know, we've all been there, where it hits the fan and then you're going, man, it changes everything, doesn't it? And all of a sudden, something that seems like a no-brainer, it is not. You have to really think about it. So if you're familiar with it and you're used to it, before it hits the fan, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And that takes training. It takes some experience. It takes the information, and it takes a good radio package.
I'll provide an example of what we did, and Andrew, I'll ask you for maybe some advice that you might have as far as how you organize those frequencies for what Jack's talking about. We organize them for pursuits. So we would list in the different banks on the Technosonic, our primary bank that we use 99% of the time, we would list the cities kind of geographically from west to east. So hypothetically, if you're in a pursuit, you're going eastbound, that the next click over is going to be the city to your direct east, which is Fontana for us. And then it's going to be Rialto, then San Bernardino, and going backwards, right? Go the other way as well. Do you guys have any advice for folks that are maybe trying to figure out how to organize their radio package and how to make it make sense in some ways?
Yeah, no, I mean, we do it the exact same way. We just flow north to south. So, the beauty of Florida is it's pretty much just grid roads, east, west, north, south. We don't have these giant, rounding freeways or anything like that. But that's the way the whole agency is. So the whole agency is basically designed around the same thing. And then we keep the same stack, but we have also, so not only do we have to deal with all of those, then we also have all of our FireCom channels. We have all of our LECom channels that go between different counties. We can get into direct line of sight channels. I mean, we have a lot of options. So then it really comes down into a really good product between, obviously knowing it. We want the crews to know it, but you got to have a quick reference. And just like Jack said, like those change all the time. Ours change probably annually. There's another update, there's been a shift. So, we always have to keep that reference card. And then you got to get somebody like, make sure that they change all of them all at once. Email is great, but it doesn't work for that all the time. But that's how we do it. So we do north to south, and then we go west. So we have basically a whole other county west of us. That's all part of our jurisdiction. I think that's a solid plan, really kind of move it geographically, the way that it would flow in the event of a call, so you can go back and forth as you need to.
Yeah, for a long time, our frequencies weren't set like that. They were kind of random. It didn't make any sense. We're like, well, how do we make this make sense? I think that's important to consider, especially in a stressful situation, because you don't want to have to try and look down at the radio head if you can avoid it. You're trying to keep your eyes on target.
Yeah, like alphabetical seems, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. Geographically, that's the only way to do it. It's the same for road patrol, too. Like, they're driving, if their pursuit is going through all these different zones, I mean, now they can patch, which is great. Our commo is unbelievable. They can patch anything. But, yeah, I mean, like, if you're driving, like I'm just flying I'm good. I know where I'm at. You're dodging other cars or whatever. So I think that's why it was originally designed like that. And Arcama does a really good job. They manage all that, so they kind of determine how it goes.
Well, man, it's cool to talk about the Huntsman mission for me because it's not something we got a chance to do. So thanks for your insight on that. Really interesting that you guys have such a large hand in those operations. So I'd like to transition a little bit and jump forward, actually backward in your career to the previous agency you worked for. At that agency, you were the chief pilot, and over the course of your career there and going forward, you've had quite a few precautionary landings, 19 to be exact, as far as what I read. And that's a that's a unique position to be in. And I think there's a lot to be learned from those different incidents that took place. Again, not many people have 19 that happen over the course of their career. Can you talk about some of those and maybe some of the impact it's had on your career going forward?
I mean, we're flying, I think we had two 1969 OH-58s and one 1971 Charlie model. And, when I worked for Martin County, I got hired by them directly to fly. I had like 700 hours, and that we had a lieutenant, George Dempsey was the lieutenant at the time, and he was the chief pilot. And then a captain, Brian McCandless, he like brought me into the unit, and they really like gave me a lot of opportunity, I should say. And they kind of let me figure things out, and they let me move the way I wanted to and adjust, the program. And all in all, what I ended up kind of realizing after a while was that Lieutenant Dempsey was kind of making me into the new chief pilot. He had an exit plan. He was going to retire, which is great because he had the forethought of succession planning. And so I just started flying, and he was like, yeah, just fly, build your time. I'll take you out. Captain McCandless took me out all the time. He was a Huey guy, Mike model Huey guy from the Guard. So building those hours and experiences, I flew 1,400 hours in like 3 years, which, doing patrol that's a lot. It's a lot of ups and downs. So with ups and downs comes maintenance issues with older aircraft. Most of those were small. They were like, you're flying around for 45 minutes. You haven't went to the fuel gauge in 5 minutes, and now it's at zero.
Like what?
Yeah,
what
like, that's not good. I think I have gas. So you land in some, it's Martin County's great. It's like, it's pretty rural. It's probably like a medium to small size county. And the people here are super, I live here now. I still live in Martin County. It's only the next county north of Palm Beach, but they're super law enforcement friendly. Everyone's just like, it's a great town. You can land in people's backyards here, and if you had to, and they would totally be fine with it.
They can bring you an iced tea. They can come out and bring you an iced tea and say, "Hey, what's up, officer?
Yeah,
You're back again, are you?"
Yeah. So there were mostly little things. Now I did have two, no kidding, that kind of got my attention. I had a TAC gen go on me, which is a very small piece of equipment, but when that thing shears, it gives you a low rotor and engine out. That was at 700 feet, left-hand orbits, over a scene in a densely populated area. And that was, I reverted back to basically all of my military training at that point. I was maybe 1,000 hours at the time. I just was like, all right, I got good rotor. I can hear it. I hear the engine. I know it's running. We do not have an engine failure. We're good. Let's just take it back to the airfield. And we were maybe like 2 minutes from the airfield. So we just set it down. But like, going through that step, doing that malfunction analysis in that split second, that's probably what saved me. Because otherwise, I would have just entered an auto and put a perfectly good airplane.
And some do.
Right. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Some people do. Yeah.
And, that would have been catastrophic. There was no place to go. Like, it wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah.
And then the other one was I had a transmission oil hot and pressure light. Out over we've got two major rivers that converge here, and I was out over one of the big rivers in the South Fork River, and I had one of the Marine guys with me. I was showing him like kind of some of the cuts, and he was in the back, and I gave him a brief before. I was like, listen, if anything happens, I gave him the whole spiel. And I was like, just stay inside until moving parts are stopped. I'll come get you. And sure enough, so I basically enter emergency descent, and there's a firehouse right there, and it's got a big open back pad in the back. And that's where I'm going. I call tower. I'm inside the airspace. I say, yeah, that's where I'm going. He goes, okay. And I land, and as I'm like flaring on the land, I look over, and all the firefighters are out there barbecuing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, they're out here. Like, this is perfect. Like, if anything happens, and all of them bolt inside. Not a single one was outside when I shut down. And I was like, what happened? They come out. I'm like, what are you guys doing? So yeah, that was interesting. You know, thinking that you have some sort of actual, you know, impending transmission failure, like you're just going to fall out of the sky. That was bothering. But yeah. And then I learned you can put a 58 on a flatbed pickup truck or a flatbed tow truck. They fit perfectly.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, we just towed her right back. So yeah, it was. But it was. I'll tell you what, the learning experience there was unbelievable. The only reason I really left was because I was still in the Guard. I knew I was going to deploy again soon, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to burden them with that. We had 3 pilots at a time. Worked for Morgan County, and I didn't think that was fair. And I knew I wanted to stay in long enough to retire. So. I needed to look for something that would allow me to do that. And then Palm Beach had a retirement coming up, and I was like, it's worth a shot. And it just timing worked out so well. I took the job down there and was able to kind of sneak into aviation as soon as that retirement slot came open, and the rest is history.
I have one question about that, Andrew. I'm fascinated by what you said when you said that the chief pilot was kind of mentoring you and had foresight to bring you along so that you were ready for his plan. That in law enforcement, that's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
it's
amazing.
I have been completely blessed. A lot of places I've gone, succession planning is just part of the deal. And,
that's good.
I think that people who are in this profession alone, not just law enforcement, aviation, if you don't think of this as finite, then you're not doing it right. This thing could be gone tomorrow, and so could you. So you probably need to have a plan in place. I can go out here and I can build as many programs as I want from the ground up. I can get new aircraft, and if I don't tell anyone how to manage it, or I don't give them an idea of like the blueprint that I laid out, then once I'm gone, the whole thing you just tried to build is going to crumble in a heartbeat.
How about that?
It's wild.
How about that?
It's wild. So yeah, it's super important. I'm a huge proponent of it. Try and make as many products as I can. Try and really kind of standardize things so that in the event, whatever, something happens, somebody can just pick it up.
Can you talk about what you're doing at your agency as far as the planning goes, and how the guys below you may know how to enact on some of that if they do?
Thank you to our sponsor, Technisonic Communications. Technisonic Communications is a proud provider of the critical airborne communications equipment utilized every day on every mission. Law enforcement, EMS, forestry, federal and military operators all trust their communications to Technisonic. Visit TIL.ca to learn how Technisonic can support your mission communications.
I'm huge on products. I like making standardized products. I get as much input as I can and then come up with a plan, right? A foundation. And we all know, like, hey, plans change, but it's a great starting block. So so I also manage like all of our special missions. So I manage and instruct all of our special missions. So all of our hoist, fast rope, area platform, ops, tactical insertion extraction, surveillance, tactical mission planning. I'm sure there's like 5 more. But so I make like courses and initial courses and then PowerPoints to go along with all those. I have a full syllabus for all of them. And so I'm still in the Air Force Reserve. I still deploy. My last tour was like 4 months. So I was gone from the agency for like 4.5 months. And when I left, I was like, all right, guys, here's the deal. Like, you guys can all go in here. It's under the same, drive that all of them can get to. And there's a checklist to go through each thing. Like, every time you want to set up training, these are the people you have to contact in order. this is the sites you're going to go to. This is exactly what you're going to say. This is the email you're going to send them. And that way anyone can go in there, see the flow and say like, oh, okay, yeah, these are the steps. I'm going to go request a radio channel for this. I'm going to contact environmental resource management and see if this area is available. Those are all steps that you have to build out, because if you don't, no one's going to know to do that. And then the program's just going to disappear. And then really to what end? You may not be able to do cool stuff anymore, but the citizens of the county that we serve, what if because you didn't keep up a program, somebody is catastrophically injured or dies because, you failed to maintain your standards? Right. It's just not worth it to me. So we keep a pretty tight ship when it comes to standardized products. And it's a culture thing. It's not, aviation units aren't flying clubs anymore.
No,
we fly. I mean, the guys will fly 12 hours in a 24-hour period between 3 shifts if we have them. I mean, they're up all the time. So I think that, as far as that stuff goes, if you don't have a product that everyone can reference and it isn't standardized throughout the entire unit, then you're really kind of just running with scissors.
I think we've talked about leadership quite a bit. I think it's important as a leader to identify what your current needs are and how to grow going forward. And once you have that roadmap in place, then you can help figure out how do I empower my people to meet these goals. Maybe not today, but down the road. And again, I think most agencies kind of struggle with that process for whatever the reason is. Jack, being as large as LAPD air support was, how did you guys help kind of foster that and develop that growth plan?
Well, it depends on the topic and it depends on the era. Some eras there was a lot of growth and others there wasn't as much. But the one thing that jumps out at me in listening to Andrew talk about this is foresight. Foresight. Andrew has foresight, thinking, well, I'm in the reserve. There are times when I'm not going to be here for maybe a long time. So how can I prepare for that to come, because it's going to come, so that somebody else can go, oh, I can do that training day because Andrew's prepared this document in detail and I participated in this training before. I can do it. Foresight's so important. And I will tell you that one of the things that the Los Angeles Police Department was not known for, and it may have changed, I've been away a little while, but I doubt it, is lack of foresight. Foresight, it's like the best example is change through catastrophe. The North Hollywood shootout, rifles. Los Angeles Police Department patrol officers did not have rifles. They were begging for them. And there were people that were big proponents of that. The department said, oh, you don't need rifles. And what happened? North Hollywood shootout. And the biggest bank shootout in U.S. history happens. And guess what they got within months? Rifles. And it's the lack of foresight that drives me crazy. That's one of 100 examples I could give you, but that's a good one. In that there were people on that department, some in high places, that had that foresight, but they were never allowed to follow up on it. So I think foresight's really important. Anticipating things that you just think, oh, well, we don't need that. Well, what if this happens? Then you do need that.
Right.
NVGs. Perfect. Another good example. We fly over the city of Los Angeles. We don't need night vision. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. You do. And it's just changed since I left. I mean, where it's easing into it, because people that didn't know anything were making decisions saying, you don't need that. Look at all the ambient light. The example I will always give is wait till the big one hits. And it's an 8.5. All those lights you're looking at, 99% of them are going to be gone. Yeah. Now you can't see your horizon and they're screaming for air support to fly. It's a new moon and you can't see. It's the same as IFR. It's like flying over the ocean. Here we have, Andrew's a very experienced guy. I mean, in a military format or law enforcement, would you go out eastbound over that Atlantic without NVGs?
Yeah, no way.
No, you can't. It's insanity, but no foresight. That's just a couple examples. So I love the foresight that Andrew has, his department has, and law enforcement in general. I've heard from a lot of agencies over the year and say, oh, we're just like that. Foresight's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to jump back real quick to the conversation on the precautionary landings, because I would imagine you had a crewed flight, you had a TFO with you a majority of the time.
Yeah, majority of the time. For both of those, I did.
Okay. So I think the conversation that we don't talk about often enough is how to prepare that TFO to assist in those precautionary landings. And sometimes they can't because it's so dynamic and so fast. But what did that do for your TFOs that were part of those? How did that help them develop to help you? And what do you recommend as far as training your TFOs to help be of some sort of assistance during those situations?
Especially now that I'm flying more complex aircraft on the regular. When you fly a 429 all the time, you have to incorporate crew coordination into that aspect of malfunction analysis. With the 58, the light comes on and you do what you're supposed to do with the light. Like that's kind of is what it is. And most of those were memorized. Those are all memorized steps. And in the 429, you just have options. There's things that happen, and sure, there's underlying steps where you need to go and execute right now. But some of those you are able to kind of work through and come up with a better plan than just, putting it down. So I think that building our TFOs, so that's kind of how like our program works, is you initially come in. The very first thing you're going to do is get like a one over the world as far as like the unit itself. Then you're going to roll into working the camera, the systems, how to pre-flight. And then you basically go right into, hey, this is all going to be emergency planning preparation. Like as we start moving through, if this happens, this is what I need you to be able to do. Eventually to the point where, hey, if I take a bird to the face, I need you to make it back to someplace safe. And, it's in both of our interests that you do that. So let's work on that. And then that gives us a little insight too. So we don't have just TFO positions in my unit. We've got 15 flight slots and they're all pilots. So all of our pilots work the cameras and they all take turns, whether that's rock, paper, scissors, or, somebody buys dinner, whatever it is. So that's part of kind of how we also determine if people are going to start working out. If I need you to be able to at least kind of learn this stuff at a basic level. So, but working in malfunction analysis is huge. And that goes into systems, right? Because you definitely need to know how things work. Knee bone's connected to the foot bone type deal. So working through that stuff is important. Books are always open. There's always flight manuals open in the hangar. Some guys are more religious than others, but if me or the other sergeant's walking around, we flip open the book. Our guys we have unit meetings probably like every 3 or 4 months. Try and do them quarterly, where usually there's a malfunctions test, closed book malfunctions test, and that's just keeping people in the game. That's all we're trying to do. So it's not really a gotcha. We sit down and we talk about all of them. And that kind of goes back into the daily brief, talking about emergency procedures. Just pick one. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then really start thinking outside the box. Like, hey, this has happened. For us, like lightning strike, there's not much in the manual for it. We're in the lightning capital of the world. Might want to have a plan. It's probably a good idea. There's just a lot of things that, having the foresight, just not being able to plan for everything, but have a plan in place.
Yeah.
At least try to plan for as much as is practical. Lightning strike. I never thought about that in SoCal, but you, like you said, you better think about it.
Yeah.
You get lightning, constant.
I have electronically controlled engines. This is going to be interesting. I have no idea what's going to happen. We'll see.
That's good.
So
It's
good
funny.
Foresight.
You guys would laugh, in Florida at us in California for how
Yeah.
rarely we get lightning. But I do remember taking off one night. We're just off the departure in crosswind, and I look over towards Big Bear, which is to our east, which kind of close to where I live, and I see lightning up there. I just kept my turn going and came back and landed, and it was pretty far away. You probably would have laughed like, "Yeah, you sissy."
Oh, that might have hit my house.
Yeah, we dodge thunderstorms quite a bit here.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with the threat of lightning?
I mean, it just is what it is. Like lightning is just a fact of life here. I mean, we just kind of try and stay away from it. Obviously weather planning is always in our minds. We've got a 650, 750 suite in the 429, and that's got Garmin weather on it. Weather's always up in the hangar. Usually somebody's back at base providing those weather updates if we need to, just pushing them out at 025 or on the actual channel, depending on what they're doing. Because the county is so large, you can get into a place, it's not like, San Bernardino or, someplace out west, but I mean, we can get pretty far away, and there's not a lot of reporting stations out there. So, keeping track of the radar, even back at base, is important. And the guys on our ground, building those relationships with Road Patrol too, going out and really like our agency's huge. It's like 3,700 people. And then sworn on the road is, I don't even know, it's a lot. And we've got all these different districts. So we try and get out there and like have face-to-face. We try and entice them to come to the hangar and do their roll calls or lineup trainings, whatever you want to call them there. But, those guys on the ground being like, hey, Eagle, you guys are on your route, but just so you know, you guys, I see some stuff building, just having a guy just even thinking about that,
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's nice. And that's helpful too. But yeah, I mean, just dodging weather here. Florida is typical, like summer, you're going to get afternoon thunderstorms that are going to roll through, but they're typically small. So you can kind of divert around them, and then they move quickly. So you could be on scene, get pushed off, circle around to the west, and come back in behind it in like 10 minutes. So it just kind of depends. And you just get used to flying with it. A lot of water spouts offshore, stuff like that. Like it's the same as, I guess, like mountain fog for guys out west. Like they're like, oh yeah, mountain fog. I was like, I am not going. That's not happening. Ice? No, no. I don't know anything about flying in ice. So that's not for me.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's the same. It's my stuff.
Chance to visit the Orange County Sheriffs when AppsCon was in Orlando, and those guys, awesome dudes, really gracious. They allowed me to come in, and we're trying to get a flight. We roll into the hangar, and it's sunny and beautiful outside. Go inside and talk for just a few minutes, and come back out, and it's black, and there's tumbleweeds blowing by. And man, it was gnarly. We're not used to that in California, so really interesting that you guys deal with that day in, day out. But it's again something we don't see very often. So interesting to hear your point of view and enlightening us that, like I said, is not something I want to mess with. So
yeah. I mean, the moral of the story for Florida is if you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's going to change.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. Well, it's funny. We're 45 minutes into our conversation, and we haven't even really talked about you a whole lot as far as like, how you got into the positions you're in. We previewed a little bit or you touched on the fact that you're in the military and that has gotten you some of your experience. But, you did go to the Citadel, which I have to say, the Citadel is really cool. When AppsCon was in, I think was it Savannah, we drove north out of Georgia and stopped at the Citadel, and what a cool campus that was. So I'm interested here about the Citadel, but before that, I do want to touch on the Civil Air Patrol because a lot of folks that have been on the podcast have talked about the benefits of Civil Air Patrol and how that helped them develop their career for a whole host of reasons. But can you talk about your experience there and how that helped you?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Civil Air Patrol gave me my first 14 hours in an airframe. I mean, I was flying a Cessna 172 with an American Airlines captain who basically just volunteered at Civil Air Patrol. That was a eye-opening experience. I mean, you're learning from somebody who they just don't make them like that anymore. He's right at the end of his career, and he just wanted to give back. So yeah, he gave me 14 hours, and it was his own plane. So they didn't use a Civil Air Patrol plane. We just used his plane.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was great. And then, Civil Air Patrol itself, I was also doing junior ROTC at the time in high school, so all of us were basically in both. We all went to kind of the same high school, and that just meant we got to get together on the weekends and do more stuff. So a lot of stuff like land nav and just kind of playing in the woods, learning survival skills that later we would get refreshed with in the military. It's all kind of the same stuff. So it's a really cool paramilitary organization for kids, in my opinion. You also learn how to do like personal locating, tracking beacons, and I'm sure everyone kind of knows like if an ELT goes off, they're calling Civil Air Patrol to come look for it. But like we'd be out there with the little handheld controllers trying to track down an ELT. So you're learning a lot of cool stuff, and then you get exposure to a lot of other things. So there's always speakers that come in. We had like a security forces canine handler came in one time. My dad came in one time, in case they wanted some Army influence. Stuff like that. Like you're hearing from a bunch of people, and you're learning about all these different routes you can take, and then really kind of just finding out where you want to go. Finding out what path is right for you. And that was huge for me. But definitely the 14 hours of flight time, you can't put a price tag on that.
That's cool.
We can, but it's steep. So
right. Especially now.
Yeah.
If you found yourself in a position where you had both programs available, junior ROTC and Civil Air Patrol, you had to pick one, which one of those two would you pick? And can you give us some insight as to why you might choose that one program?
That's a hard question.
That's a tough question. Luckily, I wouldn't really know because everyone was in both. But I think that junior ROTC set me up better for the Citadel. That set me up more for being able to go to and do a military program in a scholastic environment. Civil Air Patrol would probably be a better option if that wasn't a route you wanted to take. Right. If you wanted to go straight into the military, and then maybe circle back to college later. But when I was in high school, the junior ROTC commander was a Citadel grad, Colonel Steve Cotter. And he flew C-141s. I make fun of him all the time because he's a bus driver, but he makes fun of me because I'm a rotor head, and it's a good time. We all laugh. But he got me and another buddy of mine to go to the Citadel when we graduated, and that was really junior ROTC was really kind of important for me to be able to do well once I got to the Citadel. Kind of already be pre-exposed to that type of environment. Understanding what studying's like while wearing a uniform, because it can be challenging, kind of discerning the two. And I didn't knock it out of the park my first couple of years. So
being a part of those two programs was the intent behind doing that to get accepted to the Citadel or similar program?
No, I wasn't really planning to go to the Citadel. I thought I was, actually, to be honest, I kind of changed. I wasn't an exceptional student until maybe junior year. I started really buckling down, and then the academy started being a little more appealing. So I went out to the Air Force Academy for an interview, kind of shadow a cadet for a day. And it was negative 28 degrees wind chill. I was like, no. So I told the nice major that was meeting with me, I was like, it's very nice here. I'm not coming here. This is crazy. And then I was going to go to Embry-Riddle, and then I got a late acceptance into the Citadel. And then when I got in there, my dad drove up. We went up there, and it's in Charleston. It's a beautiful coastal town. A C-17 flew over, then two T-38s flew over in formation right after. I was like, yeah, this is where I want to go. And that was it. Once I really kind of committed, and then going to the Citadel it's such an experience. There's so much history there. You don't have the opportunity to be distracted by outside influences. There's a lot of inside influences that can easily distract you, which my freshman or my knob year, which is what they call freshman GPA, would reflect. But you find that balance pretty quick. And they can, we have a group chat, me and I think there's 24 of us on it, and we all graduated together from the Citadel. and we talk every single day. Like,
Wow.
you just don't have those relationships with people.
Right.
Just an extremely high caliber of person. And then on top of it, we all went through so much life experiences together, coupled with physical and mental stressors that kind of just welded those bonds all together. So
I love the military academies for a ton of reasons. Part of it is I love the traditions that come with your freshman year and thereafter. Can you talk about the reasoning and name behind Knob?
yeah, so they call us knob because, well, they don't do it anymore, but they used to shave your head, like buzz it all the way down, and then you look like a bunch of doorknobs when you're doing push-ups, which do a lot of push-ups. So that was the. So they call it your knob year, and it was a full year when I did it. They call it recognition day when you become not a knob anymore. I guess like upperclassmen, and that's like the day before you did, or like 2 days before you did your finals. So like everyone's exhausted. And it's a huge physical event, like culminating physical event, and then just a full day of stress and stuff. And it's just, they make you earn it, and that's what counts. And at the end of the day, like when you put kids, I mean, really the kids, small, we're children, through that, and, it just builds their confidence to a level that you can't manufacture that. It's just so life altering. It was such a huge catalyst in my life to go there. Really developed me in light years faster than I could have done it on my own.
A lot of people, including myself, talk about the academies and how it sets you up for your career after the military, if that's where you go. But I feel like outside of the Ivy League schools, there's not really many places that have the recognition that you get from going to one of those schools, because it is so tough. To be a graduate from the Citadel, from the Naval Academy, from West Point, those, if I see somebody has that in the resume, I know that they're dialed. They're an intelligent person, they're hardworking. You don't get that with many schools. Can you talk about how the Citadel set you up and some of the opportunities that it afforded you after graduating?
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason I even got into the Florida Guard was basically the Citadel. So I have kind of a weird career. I was basically tried out every single branch when I was at the Citadel. You can do that, and I thought I was going to go Marine Corps, and then second semester senior year, I took the Army Flight Aptitude Test, which is called something different now, on a whim, because my buddy and I we were going to go to a place called Moe's, which was the only bar you could go to that was walking distance.
Like from The Simpsons, Moe's Tavern?
No, yeah, actually Moe's. Yeah, no, it is. Much
awesome.
Better wings, though, I'm sure. I've seen that. Simpsons looks a little dirty. But anyway, so we go there, and I take this test, and I'd already basically thought I was going to be a Marine, and I apparently did very well. The captain calls me in from the Army department, says like, "Hey, I need you to come to my office." And I thought I was in trouble. I was like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And then roll in, and he's like, "Hey, you did really well on this test. Do you want to go fly for the Army?" I was like, first of all, come on, guarantee flying, come on. And he's like, "No, seriously, if you find a guard unit that'll take you, they can guarantee aviation." And then I was like, "Ooh, wheels are turning," because the year before, this was 2007, year before, like nobody was getting aviation. They were like paying kids off to not go in the military. And I was a little concerned that I was going to be a field artillery officer, for 4 years, just not loving life. And I didn't want to do that. So my buddy, his uncle was a Citadel grad, and he was a colonel in the Florida Guard, and email, couple chains back and forth. And then I got into the flight board, did well. They accepted me. And that's how I was in the Florida Guard for 13 years, stayed there, and I was able to kind of come up, deploy with them twice to Iraq. That would never have happened. I mean, who knows where my life would be if I hadn't have done that. So
looking back on your college career, I look back on mine, and I did all kinds of dumb stuff that was funny in hindsight. The first school I went to, Cal Baptist University, they had a statue, and your goal was to cover the statue in a soap or something, which was odd. And then when the fountain would turn on, the whole thing would would bubble up, and we would take the security guard's electric golf cart and go put it up on the. They had a like a covered deck. We'd put ramps up, go put the golf cart up there, then take the ramps away. So they had to figure out how to get the golf cart away. Did you guys have any like shenanigans like that you were a part of at the Citadel, or was that too dangerous?
Oh yeah, no. I will say that a lot of our shenanigans had to do with other people, like other schools, because we didn't want to get in trouble at our own school, because that would have not been that would have been bad. Walking, they call them tours. You walk back and forth on the quad with your rifle and just do that for hours at a time. So yeah, we're trying to get in trouble there, but like VMI, constantly try and steal stuff from them. They would try and steal stuff from us. My freshman year, my knob year, my roommate ran across the football fields at our game with VMI and grabbed their regimental guidon and ran back to the other side. Like stuff like that. Like it was always like that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a full out brawl. It was wild. And then they got video of one of their female cheerleaders who turned out to be a Marine contract and totally awesome. She hip checked one of our guys, like threw him like 12 feet. So yeah, it was a good time. I mean, but that's kind of the shenanigans that there was. You'd play jokes on each other, but nothing too crazy. At least not that I'm willing to divulge on.
Smart man. I knew Andrew was a smart guy.
Well, hey, you had brought up some deployments that you're part of with the Florida Guard. When you look back on some of those experiences you had in deployments, were those challenging or interesting for some reason or another? Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thank you to our sponsor, Technisonic Communications. Technisonic Communications is a proud provider of the critical airborne communications equipment utilized every day on every mission. Law enforcement, EMS, forestry, federal and military operators all trust their communications to Technisonic. Visit TIL.ca to learn how Technisonic can support your mission communications. Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. We hope you enjoyed the dynamic conversation with Andrew Nicoletti, where we explored his unique journey as a sergeant and pilot with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. From the intricacies of the Huntsman mission to the vital importance of leadership and training in law enforcement aviation, Andrew shared invaluable insights that are both enlightening and inspiring. As we wrap up, remember the significance of mentorship, relationship building, and thorough planning in high-stakes environments. Principles that apply not just in aviation and law enforcement, but in all aspects of leadership. We encourage you to reflect on these lessons and consider how you can implement them in your own career. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us continue to bring you insightful discussions and expert guests. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.